Something I've been grappling with lately is pregnancy, the prospect of motherhood, and minimalism. Because I talk a lot about minimalism on this channel, and I think preparing for a baby is a time where there are a lot of temptations to buy a lot of products. And I think it's a time where there's a lot of excitement, a lot of hope for the future, but also a lot of anxiety that can lead us to make decisions around spending and around purchasing that aren't necessarily in our best interest. And I don't think there's a perfect way to approach it, but I guess I wanted to just have a chat with you all about thinking through making decisions about what to buy and what to collect in this period leading up to having a baby, or maybe soon after having a baby as well. I think it's very possible that in this process of preparing, I have purchased some things that I won't end up needing or really using that much, but I have tried to be very careful and slow with my purchasing. An example of something I am really glad I purchased in this pregnancy period was the Ritual Prenatal multivitamin. And basically, I had done a ton of independent research on multivitamins and prenatals. I had tried several, but a lot of them were either really bulky and big and unpleasant to swallow, or they tasted kind of weird, or they were kind of harsh on my stomach. And maybe most importantly, I wasn't really sure of the ingredients. I wasn't quite sure what was in there or where it came from. But after doing the research, I was so happy to learn that Ritual is special in its traceability. So when they reached out to do a sponsorship, I was so excited because they really are the only prenatal that I feel comfortable trusting. Ritual shares its sources, its suppliers, and studies behind its key ingredients. They also have a clean formula with high quality ingredients that are vegan, non-GMO, gluten, and major allergen free. And they also have this delayed capsule release design that bypasses the stomach and dissolves in the small intestine, which is an ideal place for nutrient absorption. I also like that these prenatals are gentle on the stomach, and they also taste good. They come in either lemon or mint essences. And Ritual also offers subscriptions, which I signed up for so that I don't have to think about it. It just arrives at my home. If you're interested, check out the link at the top of my description box, www.ritual.com/AylinLesser, and use the promo code AylinLesser for a discount on your order. Anyway, so that was a quick example of something I purchased that I'm really glad I did, that I did a lot of research on. So I felt really confident about that choice, but some choices aren't always that clear-cut and straightforward. And so I do want to talk through what are the strategies I've been trying to use, at least, to inform how I'm approaching motherhood and pregnancy, especially because I do think there is this frenzy that happens around pregnancy and getting ready for a baby, where everyone is kind of excited for you and bringing it up, and it's a really thrilling time in many cases. But I also think getting ready for a baby, especially if you're a first-time mom like me, it's anxiety producing. You're like, will I be a good mom? I'm terrified. I don't really know what I'm doing. Will I have everything I need? Will I be prepared for those first days home with a baby when I have to suddenly actually care for another human being? And I think that can lead us to behave in sort of this frenzied, haphazard way that's way less intentional and is very anxiety driven. And I think one way to think about it is to compare it to OCD. As someone who was a therapist for OCD and was trained in exposure and response prevention treatments for OCD, I learned how obsessions in OCD really function, and how quite often the obsessions that you experience when you have OCD cluster around things that you really value. You have these intrusive thoughts that come into your head called the obsession, and you do something to quell those anxieties around that obsession. You have behaviors that you engage in, or even mental sort of behaviors or mental reassurances you give yourself to quell that anxiety around that obsession. And quite often those obsessions are focused on things we care about. So for example, if someone really loves their family, I've seen patients where they have a fear that they're going to somehow make their family members sick. And so maybe, for example, they might engage in a lot of hand washing or even avoid spending time with family members because they're afraid of making them sick. And it's interesting how OCD tends to lock on to the things that people care about. And so I think the OCD example, while somewhat unrelated, gives me a lens into what might be happening internally for me or a lot of other future moms. It's like this is a time that's frenzied, and it's probably all around something that you really care about. Like maybe you really value being a good mom and being a prepared mom and being someone who is ready for this child and will take good care of this child. I know that's something I've really cared about and thought a lot about. But what that can do is that it leads to a lot of anxiety, and then we engage in behaviors to try to quell or reduce that anxiety, to reassure ourselves we're going to be okay. Like I'm ready for this. I know what I'm doing and I have everything I need. And I think when we step back and realize that anxiety and excitement might be bolstering this drive to accumulate more, we can step back and kind of think about our decisions around shopping a little bit more intentionally. So I wanted to just share some simple strategies I've been thinking about using in this process, or I've tried to use in this process. I don't think I've been perfect about always shopping intentionally. I may have, like I said, bought a few too many things, but I think there are things that I've done that have helped stop purchases that I'm glad didn't happen, and that I'm going to continue to try to implement as I move forward. So the first strategy I've been using is to start saving up early for these purchases. When we save up ahead of time, rather than spending the money we don't have to feel as stressed out about the spending. And even if we make a few little mistakes here or there, it's not going to be a hugely problematic thing for us. That means, as soon as you're thinking about having a baby, or maybe even before that, if you're somebody who happened across this video and hasn't been thinking about having a baby yet, but hopes to in the future, start a little fund in your budget for saving up for baby costs, because it is remarkable how much you actually have to just straight up buy in the process of preparing for a baby. A second thing I've tried to do is to slow down and to plan my purchases. I've gotten a lot of documents from friends that they've sent to me that either someone sent to them or that they created themselves about what to get in preparing for a baby. And that has been hugely helpful to not just have one list or one random list that I Googled, but to get several lists from people whose judgment I trust about what they got for their child and what they found was most useful. And quite often on those lists, they can share specific brands or links to the items that they really love and that they've used a lot. And so use the resources of the people around you. I also think just simply slowing down, and even if you don't have the friends who have all the links, doing the online research and spending time thinking about pros and cons of purchases can really be helpful in making sure you purchase the right version of an item. Like, for example, we do have our bassinet back here already, but we have not purchased a crib yet. Even though I'm in my 3rd trimester, I think we're not even going to get one until after the baby's here, because again, like, I've never been a mom before. I don't know what I'm going to want in a crib. And once I have the baby, I may know a lot more about what I'm looking for. And so I'm actually waiting until after we have the baby to make that kind of decision. I also think with longer research, you can often find a more affordable dupe of the item that you like, or you can find the item secondhand online or in person. Most of my purchasing regrets up until this point have been ones that I've done in the moment impulsively, even for like little things, like little outfit pieces or little items that I thought I might need, and I just quickly threw them in my online cart and bought them. Those are the pieces that most often I've regretted purchasing. So I think just waiting a day or two before you actually buy can help you think through whether you really want something. A third strategy I've tried to use is to refrain from buying a huge amount of an item before I've really tested it out. So not buying things in huge bulk before I've had a chance to actually use them. For example, I don't want to buy hundreds and hundreds of diapers if I'm not sure I'll like a particular diaper yet. So basically, I've tried to, yes, buy big items that I may need later, but especially for those bulk items, to only buy what I need for the first 2 to 3 weeks, and then I can always build up from there. I also think a fourth thing to consider in order to purchase more intentionally and maybe more minimally is to be aware of fear-based advertising strategies or claims about specific products without any scientific backing. I think this is a time, again, because of all the anxiety wrapped up in motherhood or in parenthood, that people are actually very vulnerable. And I think companies know this, and they're willing to make claims that aren't substantiated by studies or offer you things that they're not really showing the background behind, which I think is another great example of why the sponsor of this video is pretty awesome. That, for example, Ritual with their prenatal multivitamin is all about traceability, is all about telling you about the ingredients, almost educating you about the ingredients, and showing you where they're getting them from and what the studies are behind those ingredients. Like, I think looking for products and companies that actually show that information is so important, because there's so many companies and products on the internet that will essentially try to convince you you really need their product, otherwise you're a bad parent or a caregiver. So I think that's just important to be aware of and to be thoughtful about advertising and how that plays into what you buy and your role as a future parent. Another strategy I've tried to use is to accumulate things secondhand. What's great is probably 90 or more % of the clothing items I have for this baby are actually secondhand from various people, especially my sister-in-law, who was kind enough to send a big package of a bunch of different baby clothes. And I also have a few baby blankets and things from my own childhood that my mom gave me that are both sentimental on a really nice level, but also do the job. So I think that getting things secondhand, especially because you're going to be using things for such a short period of time, is a great option, both just for the sentimentality of it, but also for your pocketbook. Another thing I've tried to remind myself is, Aylin, you don't need the prettiest or best of everything. This baby is going to grow fast. Anything I buy now might not be applicable to the future. Not only baby clothes, because they grow out of them, but even decorations or toys or things around. Like, I realize that I don't need to buy a ton of everything, maybe just one or two of things. Obviously, you want to be getting products that help your child's development, and you want to be informed about that. But I do think it's so easy to feel like, oh, I need the cutest version of this or the best version of that, and you just get sucked into this hole of wanting the best for your child, and also equating like being a good parent with getting your child the best version that you can afford. Maybe the more responsible parenting choice would actually be to buy a cheaper option or a secondhand option, or not buy the thing at all, and then save that money towards something that is going to have a longer term impact. So my next strategy is to figure out what you do want to invest in. One way to do this is to think about costs per use. How many times are you realistically going to actually use this item? Also, how will this item impact the quality of life for me or my partner? And to really take into account what is the meaningful impact on my life or my family's life by making this purchase. And that can help inform what items you maybe want to spend a little bit more on. So for me, for example, I decided something I wanted to invest a little bit more in was a really good stroller and car seat system that kind of work together, that will make it easier for me to transport the baby from the car to the house or to go on walks, simply because I do have MS and sometimes walking and lifting things can be hard for me. So just kind of dwell on what your priorities are and what is going to be the best bang for your buck. An eighth tip I have is to have some compassion for yourself and some of the choices you've made or are going to make. Like I said, this is a frenzied time. This can be an exciting time. Even just preparing for a baby is actually a lot of work, and you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna mess up also, even with your purchasing, and you're not always gonna be minimalistic even if you try to be. At least that's the experience I've had. There are a lot of emotions, and it's easy to jump to self-blame if you don't feel totally prepared, or to feel like you're doing something wrong for whatever reason, because no matter what, people are going to judge the choices you make and make comments about it. But I hope that this can just serve as a reminder to have some compassion for yourself, that you don't have to be perfect at it all. I know I'm not perfect at it all, and I'm just at the beginning of this learning journey. So I think that's important to keep in mind too when you're trying to prepare intentionally for a child. And a ninth and final tip I have for you is to remember to focus on self-care as well. Not just being the most informed parent, not just being the parent who has all the things, who's ready, who knows all the bits of jargon and strategies and has all the products, but just to take the time for yourself to make sure that you're emotionally, psychologically ready for this transition, that you've had time to process it and to think about the future, that you've had time to rest and take care of yourself. I think that's something I've honestly struggled with. I've been taking on a lot of work during this time, and I haven't necessarily been resting the way I had initially planned to. So I'm really trying to take these final weeks in stride, and I'm just trying to slow down a bit and just focus on my own personal preparation, not just sort of for the baby, but also for me. We need to remember who we are and what we bring to the table as people, and our worth as humans, and our own dreams and our own priorities. And it's okay to make space for that even during this time when you're preparing for a baby. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts around preparing for a baby in at least a slightly more minimalist way. I'm still gaining more information all the time, and I know that there will be parts of this process that I regret and would do differently, but all I can do is the best I can do, and that's what I'm doing. If any of you have thoughts about how you're approaching parenthood and accumulating stuff for your baby in a thoughtful, intentional, or sort of minimalist way, let me know what your tips are, what your thoughts are. I'm still in this process, so I'd love to learn from all of you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. You can also subscribe below for more videos like this. Both those things really do help support the channel, so if you're willing to take a moment to do either or both of those things, I would personally so appreciate it. And thanks again to Ritual for sponsoring this video. Again, their link is at the top of the description box. Thank you so much for spending this little bit of time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!